The most amount of dogs I've had in one go is 10. Now, nobody needs 10 dogs. It's a very, very huge amount of dogs to own in one go, and it certainly wasn't my choice for owning 10. But so I have lived in multi-dog households with lots of kind of personalities, lots of issues going on. So I'm going to talk you through about managing that as well. We'll talk about introducing puppies, introducing adult dogs, and hi Claire, and introducing dogs if you have dogs who don't like dogs, because there's always that scenario sometimes can crop up. So it's not always your choice through having another dog come into the household. Sometimes situations are thrown upon us, and it can be really helpful to know how to deal with that. So, or how to introduce them, how to manage it. You may even have a multi-dog household at the moment that you're currently living in, where perhaps the dogs don't get on all the time, or perhaps they don't get on at all, and you might like some tips for that. And I've got bits for that at the end as well. So we'll go through it bit by bit in stages. We'll go through from like easiest possible scenarios of multi-dogs to hardest. And I'll talk you through my dogs as well throughout it, because they are obviously why I know quite a lot about living in multi-dog households. So not only am I a behaviourist and I work with, my favourite things to work with are kind of dog-to-dog aggression, dog-to-human aggression and resource guarding. Well, all of those three things can crop up a lot in multi-dog households, and they can be triggered by each other or brought on by each other, made worse by each other. And so I see them a lot when I work with multi-dogs as well. So when I said previously that I had 10 dogs in my home at one go, that was just because I had a lot of foster dogs as well at the same time. So I actually wrote down the 10 that I had, just to help give you a little bit of perspective about it too. So I had at one time Missy, Pudgy, Bosun, Mackerson, Tiani, Busby, Kibber, Wooney, Lottie and Zep. So they were all various sizes, so shepherd crosses, Rottie crosses, mastiff crosses, down to Chihuahua crosses. 4 of them were dog aggressive, 3 were people aggressive, 4 were resource guarders, 1 had separation anxiety from dogs, which we'll talk about, and 2 had no issues whatsoever. They were just a bit dense, and they were good by default dogs, we'll call them, and which we'll talk about that later as well. So long term, I certainly couldn't have lived with that many dogs long term. It was a very short term thing. I think it was about 2 months I had 10 for, and that was long enough, to be totally honest. No one needs 10 dogs. It's a stupid amount of number of dogs to have. But normal people tend to have 2 dogs, 3 dogs, 4 if they're edging on the side of crazy, like me, and any more than that, and you really like to live on the wild side. But normal kind of amount of dogs to have is 2 or 3 dogs. So we'll talk a lot about that number of dogs today. So if you would like any further kind of clarification or anything, if you happen to have more dogs than 2 or 3, then please just whack in the comments, jump in there and let me know. So quite often when it comes to having another dog, it's usually because our first dog is either not necessarily easy, but because we're happy with where they're at the moment. So we might find that you'd like a good by default next, would you? I think you're probably owed one, aren't you? I'm definitely owed one. I should definitely have a good by default dog next. So yeah, quite often we're happy with where our dog is at. So you may find that your dog is socialised to a point where you're happy with them. That they are trained enough to a point where you think, yep, they're quite easy on walks, they're quite easy when people come in the home, I'm happy with their social skills, and I think that I'd like to add another one, or I'd like to have another dog. So we as humans, not just dog owners, not just dog lovers, but humans have a very rose-tinted glasses look on things. Like the kind of grass is always greener on the other side way of thinking of things when it's something we want. So quite often when people want to have another dog, they think, oh, it would just be like having 2 of what I've got at the moment. So, I just buy double the amount of food, and, we do a bit more training, but we kind of do the same walks that we're doing right now. And we have everyone over like we normally do. And we kind of just do everything the same, but there'll be 2 dogs instead. So you expect a bit more training to do, but you don't kind of do a huge amount more than that. That's usually the idea. Because the plan is that you just have 2 dogs like a normal person, and they get on and everything's normal and it's great. And sometimes that happens. So sometimes that can happen. not in my lifetime it hasn't, but certainly it can happen for other people. So sometimes that does just occur. You get a second dog and then it's great. So I don't know many people who get a second dog when their first dog is really hard work, when their first dog is very difficult in most scenarios. So you do occasionally get it, but it's not that common. Usually it's because the first existing dog is pretty okay with things. So they go, yeah, okay, I can get another one. Or their first dog is young enough where it is usually under a year old, and they're happy with where they're at and they get another one. And they've not quite hit into the full, maybe not quite hit into a secondary fear stage, or not quite hit into the full swing of adolescence yet. Or the dog hasn't completely finished their learning and growing and understanding, because that happens when they get to 3 years old. So every dog is learning, growing, understanding the world until they are 3, regardless of size. Even if you have a little dog, yes, they mature quicker, but they're not done learning until they're 3. So if you, your dog is, say, like under 1, and you think, oh, my dog's great, it loves other dogs, it's been really social, and I'm really loving life with my dog and I want to get another one, you still may come across bumps in the road with your first one, which can make it difficult then when you've got a second one, because you weren't quite anticipating the issues with the first one. Now, obviously, no one can predict the future, and I did this. So I had my first boy, who was definitely mine rather than family dogs and dogs in the home, was Mackerson. So he was my chocolate Labrador. And Mackerson was a sort of good by default-ish. I thought he was hard work at the time. Definitely wasn't hard work. Not now I look back on it, not compared to the dogs I know now. But at the time I thought he was a bit of a pain in the butt. But he was good by default in a sense that he was social. He was really happy seeing everything. You could kind of do anything you wanted to in the home or out on a walk, and he would just go, all right then. And he didn't really care about anything much. So he was pretty happy, confident in his own little world. And so then I got Pudder. And Mackerson was 9.5 months when I got Pudder. And then I started hitting bumps with Mackerson about a year down the line. And as we will talk about, I thought because Mackerson loved dogs outside, that would mean he would love dogs in the house. That really isn't true. I can't stress that enough, that just because a dog likes dogs outside does not mean they're going to like dogs in their home, because it's a completely different scenario. So we will talk about that later, but that is a really important point to remember. Dogs can love dogs outside and hate them inside. Dogs can love dogs inside and hate them outside, because dogs learn through association and association of environment as well. So it doesn't always tally. So just because your dog likes dogs outside doesn't mean they're going to want one in their home. So that's something we'll speak about. So we'll start easy off when we talk about multi-dog households. And if you have any questions as I go along, please please write them, and I'll do my best to answer them. If it's going to come up later, I'll just say that's something we'll talk about in a bit, and I'll keep it in mind. So I have loads of pages of notes, so I hope you guys have got some time. So starting off easy, if we assume you have a dog-friendly dog, so the dog you have at the moment is dog-friendly and you're thinking about getting another dog, you want another one and you just want to know how to make it work. So the best things to think about, first of all, is time. So time is a huge one, because in order to make sure it is successful and that it's going to be as easy as possible for you, you're going to want to double everything. And by that I mean the walks are separate to begin with. The dogs pretty much lead kind of separate lives. So you're building up the time that both dogs are left alone without you, without each other. You're building up training for both dogs. So that's, your existing dog may well be quite well trained, but that's well trained without any other dog's input. So your dog at the moment, if it's quite restful, easy to rest in the home, is happy to relax, that's because there's not another dog or puppy there who's into everything and who might be with all their toys or their bones, or who might be getting attention from you. So once that happens, will your current dog still be as easy to rest? Will they still just want to lay down and do nothing, or will they be involved? Sometimes that's quite difficult, and you have to put a lot of work into both dogs doing absolutely nothing, because sometimes that has to be taught. It doesn't come naturally, which not a lot of people are aware of or even know is a thing until it happens, and then they've got two dogs who are on the go constantly, and if one gets up the other gets up, if one wants to do something the other one's got to be involved, and their heads have to be involved in everything together, and they can't just ignore each other. So that's because that often needs teaching. Understanding individual needs, so that's a huge thing to think about. So if we take children, for example, so I've had a lot of thought about this, and I often talk about this with my poor other half, who I bore rigid with thoughts. But I often think about, when you think about children, so I'm one of three, so I've got an older brother and a younger brother, so there's 18 months between each of us, so we're quite close in age. So when it comes to individual needs, my older brother, because he was the first one, he obviously spent a lot of time around adults, I suppose, as opposed to children. He would do everything that my mum and dad did, and he was involved in lots of different social settings on his own because he was the only child. He was also the first grandchild, so that there was no other grandchildren around, it was just him. So therefore he built up a lot of social confidence and a lot of self-confidence. He has a lot of that, and still does now. Whereas I'm the middle child, so everywhere I went, he already was there. My older brother was already there. And so I was okay in situations when he was there. And a lot of that is still very true now. It doesn't need to be my brother, but when I am around family members perhaps, or friends or something, you feel confident. When it's you on your own, not so much. So I have quite a lot of social difficulties, believe it or not, because I am like a middle child. So my experiences of people and of situations where I had secondary confidence, which is what you get in a lot of second dogs and third dogs. So they get secondary confidence, which is they have it because the existing dog in the household is fine. So I had it because my brother was fine. He was confident, he'd go off and play, and he had his friends, and so I'd go off and play with them. Left to my own devices, had he not been there, I probably wouldn't have involved myself in anything. I would have held back. And that is very true of dogs. Now, my younger brother, so the third one of us, he is even less so confident. So you wouldn't know it because you get this fake confidence that comes through, which is a front. So they kind of put up this bit of a barrier. So they seem fine. They seem absolutely fine in social situations. But really, they're quite introvert and they'd rather be on their own. They don't really want to be around everybody. And they will often put themselves in situations they'd probably rather not be in. They show confident, they kind of look really confident and really sociable and involved in everything, but you can kind of see that they're not really, they're not completely comfortable. That's like your third dog. And like second, third dogs can be very, very like that. So when it comes to understanding individual needs, you need to treat them as an individual. So anyone who has children, you may be able to relate with that a little bit. You might notice that in your children if you have multiple children. But giving them that one-on-one time to socialise is so important. They need to build their own social circle, their own social confidence, their own way that they feel about things. Quite often, adult dogs and puppies will get taken into a situation because there is one confident member in a group, or there is their older brother or something is completely fine and great in that situation. So they will go into it even though they're not completely comfortable with it. So that's a thought that I bat around quite a lot. And I always try to ensure that anyone who is getting another dog or who has got another dog or who gets a puppy really spends that time doing things separately for as long as you possibly can, to be honest. I usually say for at least the first 6 months. Ideally, you want to go beyond that because the first 6 months of a puppy or a dog's sort of life with you is not really that long. It's not that much of a great big length of time. So, and this becomes more tricky when you have multiple dogs. So when we talk about myself and I had the 10 dogs, I couldn't walk them all individually. That would be silly. I'd be walking all day. But there were certainly individuals within that group who needed to have one-on-one time more so than the others because of the issues they had or because of confidence, and we needed to build that, or social skills that needed building. So it's always best to assume that you need to work on issues and work on them individually and separately. Even if you've got a young puppy or even if you have 2 completely confident dogs, there will be little issues that you will need to work through with them, and putting them together too early on to deal with things, certainly on walks, can be very hard to undo down the line. So if you have multi-dogs at the moment, take them out for some separate walks and see what behaviours you get, to see, is it any easier? Do they seem more confident, less confident? Are they happier? Are they more withdrawn? And kind of work from there. So when it comes to people, so we always seem to forget this one as well. Having people in the house is something that each of your dogs need to be comfortable with individually before being together. So that's an interesting one, because quite often if you've got your first dog and your first dog is absolutely fine with people coming in, take my Maxim for example, he would stamp his feet and get excited, you know, ha ha ha, he used to go like with his mouth. But he didn't care if people were there. Once he'd done his excitement, he'd walk off and go to sleep. But because of his excitement for seeing someone, that kind of stamping and that fuss near the door, that led my second dog and my third dog to really get het up around the door, and the excitement that he was showing used to cause them quite a bit of concern, and they didn't quite understand what was going on because someone was coming through the door. So not only are they trying to deal with the person at the door, we're all suddenly at the door because I'm at the door letting someone in, someone new is at the door, Mackeson's getting all stampy and happy, all overexcited all of a sudden, and then you might have another dog who starts barking. So it creates such a big situation. So had I taken the time to make sure that Maxim was out on a walk, say, and then invite someone round, so that my second dog and my third dog could get used to meeting people on that one-on-one basis without the additional excitement from my first dog, that could actually have led to a better situation and could have led Pudge to be better with other dogs, with other people coming in the house. So that's one that we often forget, is some dogs get so overexcited near the front door when people come in and they're jumping all over them. A lot of that is actually over anxiety, not knowing how to deal with that situation because there's so much going on, and their sibling or the other dog that they live with might be getting so overexcited and they're like diving all over the place that they copy, and then they kind of try and outdo each other, but they're not quite sure why. So teaching things individually and socialising and exposing them to situations individually before putting them together is so much easier, and you make progress so much quicker than you do if you try tackling it when they're together. So if you have multi-dogs, try it separately. Have some times where one goes out for a walk and the other one doesn't. See, is there an issue there? Because this is the other thing that multiple dogs have to get used to, is not always being with the other dog, or dogs if you have multiple dogs. Because there will sadly come a day where one of the other dogs passes away, which is a horrible thought, but you have to think about this. This does happen. And they will then be alone. They've got to be able to deal with that. Not only would they be mourning the loss of another dog, they've also then got to cope with being alone, which can be really traumatic for some dogs. So building up time where they are on their own, where they're left in the home alone from as young as possible ideally, but if you don't have that option of doing it as young as possible, then just doing it as soon as possible and building up very, very short periods of time where they're on their own so that they get used to it and it's not a big deal. It helps to build confidence in them as well, and helps them not to become so reliant upon the other dogs. So that's something that takes time. So there's a lot of planning, a lot of time, a lot of patience that is involved when you have multi-dogs. It's never just as easy as let's just get another dog and see what happens, because that's often where then I get called in because it's not worked. So the other thing that I want to talk about is when you go to get another dog. So you may be thinking, my dog's great and I want to get another dog. Victoria says, so got one very, very nervous one with people, especially in the house. I thought it would be better as others are confident and fine with visitors, but doesn't seem to transfer. No, see, quite often that doesn't. What that can actually do is draw the nervous one into the situation that one doesn't want to be in, because the others are happy getting closer to that visitor and, you know, maybe jumping all over them or saying hello and getting fuss from them. That nervous one can actually get a lot of concern for them and their safety. If they're not confident with the visitor, they can actually feel that the other dogs are under threat. And they can get very, very obsessed about keeping an eye on them and maybe barking excessively, backing up, coming too close, backing away again, snapping sometimes. And Whereas if the others were out of the house or away, and it's just the nervous one who's allowed to meet the person, or not, if they choose to just be in the same room as them, they can actually start to build a bit of their own confidence up in their own time. There's a lot of, as I say, when it comes to socialising multi-dogs together, the not so confident ones can often get drawn into a situation they would otherwise choose to stay out of. So given the choice, without that magnetic draw of the other dogs, pulling them towards it because they're in it, they actually make better choices to hang back, or better choices to keep themselves to themselves, or to be calmer. When they've got the either overexcitement or over-involvement of other dogs, they are then put in a situation because they want to be with them, but it doesn't mean they want to be with the person. Does that make sense? So separate is the way forward for them. So keep the ones who are happy together, they can meet people together, but the one who's nervous, maybe take some time for that one to get used to people on their own. So give that a go. Don't give your visitor food. Generally, again, that draws them into the visitor because they want the food, but they don't want to be close to them. So if there needs to be food involved, you have it, and you can reward good choices, but you don't want any guests doing that ideally. So I hope that helps. Give that a whirl, but quite often the influence of other dogs is not always a great thing, unless they're confident, calm, and kind of happy to just hang back and go, oh, it's a person. That's a good influence. But if it's not confident, calm, and laid back, it's not helpful. So, educated, what have I written down? One of my scribbly notes. Educated best dog guess. So I know what that means. What that means to me is when you choose to get another dog. So your first dog might be great, or your first dog might be, work in progress, but you still want another dog for a reason. You're wanting to add another member to your household. So you have this amazing option to choose any dog in the world that you want. So that means you can take as much time as you want to do this. If it is your choice to bring one in and it's not kind of thrown upon you, which we will speak about. But if you're choosing to have another one, you can choose to ask all the vets, all the groomers, all the trainers, all the behaviourists locally to you, or even further away if you like, what their experience is of a breed that you are looking at, or a type of dog that you are looking at. So these are the best people to ask, because for some reason Google seems to throw out that this is a great family pet, this is a great family pet. Regardless of what breed you put in, it's always this is a great family pet. I disagree with the majority of things that Google come out with. Most people on Facebook, when you ask people on social medias, they can only tell you of their experience, and that is quite often of their one dog they've had, or their friend's dog, or their mum's dog, or something like that. They may have had a few dogs, but they don't tend to see the problem dogs. So the people who do, groomers see problem dogs because they have to groom most people's dogs, and usually the reason they have to groom them is because people can't do it. You can ask them, which ones do you get the most bites from? That's a great question to go with. Ask your vets, which dogs do you see for the most problems? Which ones come in which are more aggressive, which are more fearful? Which ones do you see for the most anxiety? Same with trainers and behaviourists. Which breeds of dogs do you see the most issues with? Which ones would you advise against? These are the ones you want to avoid, ideally, because there's a reason that we all see them for the same kind of problems, or there's a reason that they can identify a particular breed or a particular type and say, I get issues from this type of dog, whatever that issue may be. You can also do a lot of kind of forward thinking. So if your dog is really sociable, really boisterous, really playful, you don't want to bring in a second dog who is either quite weak in structure. So obviously all puppies are quite weak and you have to be quite careful with them. But you don't want to bring in one that's very fragile, or ones that aren't well known for having strong play styles, for those who quite like to keep themselves to themselves. If you have a dog who's not keen on being too close to other dogs, they like a bit of their own space, don't get a really super sociable, friendly breed that loves to play with other dogs. Choose one that's also milder manners, maybe a bit calmer. If you have a dog who doesn't like being stared at particularly, or doesn't like dogs, kind of iron them up a bit, then don't go for your herding breeds. Don't go for maybe sight hounds can be a bit eye happy as well, like your whippets, your greyhounds and things, because they're drawn to movement, so therefore they stare at everything. So just thinking about what your dog likes. So the kind of dog you have at the moment, what are they most comfortable with? These are the kind of dogs that you want to look at for getting, like type of breed or something for getting. So it might be that quite often the reason people get another dog is their friend or their family member or their neighbour or someone they've seen has one of these dogs and it's great. That's usually how it starts off. It's my mum had this one and it was lovely, or my friend has this and it's lovely. If it's not going to match well with your dog because of your dog's personality, not what they look like or what breed they are, but their personality, it's going to be very, very uphill battle for you. It doesn't mean it won't work, it just means it's going to be harder. You can choose to make this easy for yourself. So like I say, you have the option to pick any dog you like, any breed, any type, any age as well. So not many dogs mix with puppies that much. So the reason why a lot of people get a puppy, and certainly a puppy is their second dog or their third dog, is because they believe it'll be easier. So the reason for that thought is because what we often, what we could do is put our imprint on them, and we can say that for the next 3 years, because remember, it takes 3 years for all the experiences to be absorbed and 3 years for the dog to fully finish growing, learning and absorbing information about their idea of the world. We can say for the first 3 years of this dog's life, I'm going to do my absolute best to make sure that they are socialised, that I'm working on potential behaviour problems, training problems that could arise with this dog, and if I run into a struggle, I can detect it early on. That's what you're saying when you get a puppy. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually really, really good, and it's a great way forward. But not many dogs mix with puppies regularly enough to know if they actually like puppies. So many adult dogs liked puppies when they were a puppy because they were a puppy. But when they're an adult dog, puppies are actually pretty terrifying. They're like little land sharks, and they've got horrible needle teeth, and they steal everything, and they're into everything, and they've got no spatial awareness whatsoever because they don't understand that yet. And they take up so much of the owner's time because they're learning, they're doing the toilet training, they're doing, like the teething, the socialising. And because of that, they actually can be quite hard work to live with for an existing adult dog. So obviously there are some adult dogs who adore puppies and they just think they're the best thing in the world, and they like to roll around with them, they like to play with them, they're very gentle with them, or they go silly when they're near them because they're kind of daft as well. And they're then possibly a great match for having a puppy come in. But quite often people say my dog loves other dogs, but that doesn't mean that they love puppies. And puppies hurt. You only get those puppy bites, those needle teeth. They tend to, when they live with another dog, they tend to focus all of their attention on that other dog. So therefore they bite the other dog a lot more. So you'll be like, oh no, I don't really get bitten that much. No, but your adult dog has got like teeth marks all over it and got drawn blood everywhere because the puppy is hanging off their ears and their face all the time. So you then have to do prevention and management of your puppy not bullying your adult dog to death. So that then brings up a whole new struggle because you're trying to manage that situation so that your adult dog isn't getting bullied and your puppy isn't learning the wrong kind of ways of socialising. Yeah, land shark, that's what I call them. The little land sharks, they're evil. And yeah, if Rolly seems nervous of tiny puppies, that's quite normal. So he's quite a big dog, Rolly. So little tiny puppies could be terrifying for him, running in and out of his feet, leaping up with their little teeth. For him to try and process how to be okay with that could be quite difficult because he can't play with it really. He's too big to play with it. Some dogs are great at laying on the floor, minimising their size, and kind of mirroring and things. But for some dogs, they just haven't got a clue how to do that because it's so little. It's actually scary. So that's something to think about as well. If you're thinking about getting another dog, does your dog like puppies? If they don't, an older puppy that's kind of gone through that teething stage already could well be better, or an older dog could be better, an adult or old dog, depending on what you're looking at. But you actually get this option. It's great if you're thinking about getting another dog, you have all the time in the world, all the choices in the world, all the breeds in the world to get it right. to get the right dog for your dog and to make this as easy for you as possible. So don't rush into one, and don't look at one because of the looks of it or because your friend has one that you like or something like that, because I can guarantee your one will not be like it. It'll look like it, but it won't be like it. And it could be difficult for you. So he stands there going, help. Yeah, bless him. Poor boy. Gets bullied by the little ninja sharks. So yeah, everyone thinks a puppy's going to be easier, bringing a puppy in. And like I say, you get to put your imprint on them, which is great. But as I said in my last live chat, there's a reason why so many dogs have ended up in rescue and getting rehomed. And it's because everyone's imprint is quite often not a brilliant thing. So unless you know what problems you're trying to prevent, if you've never lived with or experienced an issue, there is no logical reason why you would know how to prevent this issue from happening, because you've not lived with it or you've not experienced it. So you can only work on things that you know about. So you could be working on preventing some things whilst accidentally other things are forming. At least with an adult dog. So if we look into bringing in an adult dog into your home, I believe from personal experience that bringing in an adult dog into your home that has lived in a foster home with other dogs for over 3 months of time, it would give you the best accurate representation of if this dog will be okay with other dogs, living with other dogs. Because obviously if we think about your dog, we don't know that your dog would be okay living with another dog, but we also don't know that the incoming dog will be okay living with other dogs. So if you're thinking of getting an adult dog and it's already in a foster home, it's already living with other dogs, other personalities, and they haven't seen an issue there, you stand a better chance of it going well with your dog, and you will get a better idea and understanding of what that dog is like living within their home, living with their dogs, and if there are any issues, what are they? Because that can give a great view for you, and you can choose again, is this one going to be right for me? So yeah, foster home environments are helpful. Kennels, not so much. Majority of my dogs have come from kennel environments. Majority of my dogs who've come in are dog aggressive. So we'll talk about that, of how you introduce that in a little bit. But yeah, you can choose. So if you're thinking about getting another dog, have a real think about one, not just what would you like because of what someone's dog you may know, or because if you like the look of something or the trainability of something. I mean, trainability is important, but not if your existing dog doesn't get on with them. That is top priority. Your dog getting on with them is top priority. So, cup of tea time. I always forget my teas because I talk too much. So yeah, I just put on here in big letters for myself. I just want to clear up that dogs being okay living with dogs does not mean they're going to be okay outside with dogs. And dogs being outside with dogs does not mean they're going to be okay living inside with dogs. And I'll probably repeat that again in a little while because it's so important and it really needs thinking about, that does. So the main issues that I tend to see from second and third dogs. So obviously I work with a lot of multi-dog households. It's one of the things that I specialise in because it comes under dog aggression. It usually comes under resource guarding, and it comes under a lot of other issues too. And I've had a lot of personal experience of it. So I understand the frustration of living with dogs who either are difficult or who don't get on or who antagonise each other or who, wind each other up in some way. Because dogs know how to do that as well. Dogs are great at doing that. And issues are always exacerbated when there is more than one dog. When you have one dog, that's an easy management situation there. When you have two dogs doing something, you not only do you have the issue of dog number one with, if we take Victoria's kind of example, we have a visitor. So we don't only take dog number one with a visitor, we've also got the issue with dog number two with a visitor, and then potential for dog 1 and 2 together because there's a visitor. So, and if you have multiple dogs, again, there is each set of personalities and then with each other as well, dealing with visitor. So every situation you go into when there are two dogs, there is so many different conversations going on and different scenarios going on that you have to consider and work through. Now, you might just end up getting two dogs who are good by default. And I absolutely love dogs like this. And I wish I was one of these people who is lucky enough to get these good by default dogs because they're brilliant. They don't cause you any problem at all. You go and get a dog and they just do. It's great. I'm not allowed them, apparently, by the law of the world. But so the main issues I see from second and third dogs. So I've written down another list. They're all in pink and purple and everything. I've colour-coded my points. So separation anxiety from owners, separation anxiety from other dogs in the house, always needing to be involved in absolutely everything, inability to switch off, excessive barking, resource guarding and resource guarding space. So that could be space around the human, it could be space around themselves, space around another dog. That's a fun situation to work with. Lack of self-control and poor social skills. They are your general issues you get from second dogs, third dogs, fourth dogs. And the reason for that, a lot of it is because there is too much reliant on the dogs doing it themselves. So letting them do it and see how it goes. There is not enough management prior to a problem starting. That's usually why a lot of these appear. Victoria says, trouble is I end up feeling sorry for the problem dog as have no kids or many visitors and good sized garden and have had problems before, think May as well. Sorry, it's my reading. I figure only if I'm better than what they've got scenario. My first 2 rescues were dreams. I just want an easy again for a change. Yeah, I want an easy one too. Thing is, you can't feel sorry for problem dogs when they're in your home anymore. When they're with you and they're no longer in that traumatic situation, they're no longer, like dogs live in the now, they live in the right now. So if they are safe, and we'll talk in a minute about the hierarchy of dogs' needs, which is an actual thing that you can look up, and I will share a thing in the group as well soon. If their needs are met and they're okay and they feel safe, then you no longer have to feel sorry for them. They're no longer in that traumatic position. They're now in a position where they can learn things and where they are in a good space. So you can actually decrease stress and decrease anxiety in their lives and make their lives better, and your life most likely better, more relaxed, because you're not feeling sorry for them now. You're now working through issues. So sometimes our emotions get in the way and we can actually prevent progress, which is very much a human thing. But it actually can hinder a lot of your progress and you know, get in your own way a little bit. So take a step back and have a think about what the issues are. Maybe write them down, what issues you're having, and think if any of these are to do with each other because they're together, and how you can work with them, and try to take the emotion from it. So that can really help. This is often why dog trainers and behaviourists will seek the help of other trainers and behaviourists to help them with their own dogs, even if they're qualified, even if they have understanding, because they have emotional attachment to their own dogs. So sometimes you can't look at it objectively and think of a good plan because you're so emotionally involved with each dog and with each dog kind of relationship as well. So like personally, I'm working with 2 other behaviourists at the moment. So one local to Milton Keynes and one who's not. She's I've worked with her online, and I have worked with three behaviourists with my dog. So when I say work with, I mean we bat ideas around, we message each other about things, we have Zoom chats. They might have come out on a walk with me, like I've gone out and walked with other behaviourists and said, right, well, let's see what you're dealing with. Because sometimes when that emotional attachment is so strong, it's very, very difficult to see the problem. And that's why it can help to have outside eyes. So I hope that helps. Just kind of take a back seat and try and take your emotion away from it and try and work with the problems you've got. The dogs are safe now, so you don't need to feel sorry for them anymore. Yeah, I was saying about the issues that I see from the second and third dogs. They really, really struggle a lot. So occasionally you get a second or third dog that is one of these good by default dogs. And there's one I'm thinking of at the moment where the initial dog is definitely the problem dog. Without a shadow of a doubt, he's the problem dog. The second dog is lovely. She's so chilled. She's so super laid back. She doesn't give a stuff about anything. She's great. She's a good by default dog. And the owner will say that as well. It's not really to do with anything they have done with her. She's just great. And she's just not bothered. She's so laid back. And that is nice. It's very unusual to get that. It's very, very unusual to get the second good by default dog. So the good by default dog that's that dog that you see in the street who just walks along on that nice lead with its owner. They let it off and it doesn't really go anywhere. They have people over, it says hello and then it walks off and goes to sleep. It doesn't guard anything, it doesn't bark, it doesn't really do anything. And they're generally just quite happy dogs. They're just confident, they're sociable, they're just in their own kind of little la-la land. And they're quite happy doing their own thing as long as they get fed and they've got a bed and they've got a human to sit near if they fancy it. They're not anxious or stressed in any way. These are your good by default dogs. So quite often it looks like so much training has gone into these dogs to make them that way. And sometimes there has, but you will usually notice if someone has a dog that they've worked really hard at and that's why it's good, there's a lot of interaction going on between the human and the dog when you see them. They're very aware of the dog and they're very, like the person's kind of peripheral vision's always on the dog and they're aware of each situation. They're interacting with their dog a lot. And their dog is well behaved because they've put a lot of effort in. But you can see that effort and that relationship there. When you have a good by default dog, generally there's not a huge amount of interaction that goes on between the owner and the dog. They love the dog. Don't get me wrong. They love the dog. They give them attention and things. But in each scenario, their mind isn't on what is the dog doing. Do I need to be involved in what the dog's doing? Do I need to be praising anything, rewarding anything, interrupting anything? Their mind isn't on that because they've never had to, because the dog just does and it happens to be brilliant. They're your good by default dogs. And it's mighty frustrating and infuriating when you see them in the street and you think, why is my dog not like this? I love my dog so much and I've done so much with them. And, I desperately want my dog to not be barking at things or not be being a pain, not be jumping on people or not be aggressive or fearful or whatever. And you think, why can't my dog be like that? And it's usually because they're just born that way. Some of them are just magical little unicorns and I don't know where they come from. I think the fairies drop them off, to be honest. But they appear every so often. So you might see them. You might know these good by default dogs that you see. They are not the norm, I can assure you. They really are not the norm. It'd be great if you're looking at getting another dog and you happen to come across one of these. But they're not normal. Wow, so true. It is. It's so true. But you don't see them very often. Like I said, when I had my 10 dogs, I had 2 of these good by default dogs. So one was Tiani, which was my Labrador cross English Bull Terrier cross Labrador, and one was Zepp, which was my Rottie cross German Shepherd. And both of them, they were so dense. My God, they were lovely, but they were just, they didn't have a drive. Do you know what I mean? Like they didn't have oh, there's a squirrel, oh, there's a cat, oh, there's a dog, oh, it's a person, yay. They're just kind of neutral and just not really fussed. They were happy. They're like, oh yeah, it's a person. But there was nothing like one way or the other about them. And I think maybe they don't have a very broad spectrum of emotion. Perhaps that's what makes a good by default dog. Perhaps they don't have too much of that. So they don't really go one way or the other. Whereas when you get dogs who are, prone to either be super anxious, super happy, super anything that's not neutral, that could be where you get the struggles. Maybe. I don't know. I just thought that in my head. Maybe. So the other interesting thing that I see in the multi-dog households when I work with them, I love this one. You have a ringleader of chaos. Now, your ringleader of chaos will be your dog that you would contact me about. This is the dog who you say, he is definitely the barker. He is the problem. He is the noise. He is the one who is the hardest to live with. He's such a struggle. And, maybe since he came along, everything's become so much worse. Or, he definitely has the anxiety or the aggression or the overexcitement problem. It's definitely him. So he's your ringleader of chaos. He's the obvious pain in the bum. You then get your ninja. You got a secret ninja dog in multi-dog households, who they're usually really, really good. So they're your subtle problem dog. So what they do, you could be on a walk and they will see a dog and they'll go, dog. And they will point it out to the ringleader of chaos, who will then lose their marbles completely and barking fit or lunging or super excited to see this dog. Had the little secret ninja not just elbowed that one and gone, there's a dog there, by the way, they would have probably been okay, or a lot calmer, or a lot more able to deal with it. The ninja is also the dog who in the house might hear something and just go, oof, and set the entire house off. But the one who will bark the longest, or who will react the longest, or who does the most excitement or the most aggression or is the most exaggerated is the one you will say is the problem. So you get the kind of chaos dog, who is the one you believe is the problem, And nearly always when I work multi-dog households, I find a ninja. And the ninja is the one you also have to train, because they are the subtle little problem starter that you wouldn't notice. They look like an angel because they don't do it too obviously. Victoria, yes, my ginger ninja elbows Holly to get her to start. Yeah, you do. You have a ninja. And they really do. They will kind of subtly, stealthily just set the problem off. So they need training just as much as your chaos dog. So it can be that it's not even a bark or a noise that they make. It can be that their ears just go up and they go, oh, there's something there. There's a difference in the environment somewhere. Oh, there's food. Or, you know, oh, mum's getting up and she's going to go walk in the other room. That change in them, that slight raise in arousal or excitement or in anything, sets off your chaos dog, sets off your problem dog. But you need to work on it with your ninja, because if your ninja doesn't give that indication, then the chaos creator doesn't create chaos. They only do it because the ninja tells them to. So you need to bear that in mind. Your dog at the moment who you have, if you're considering getting another dog, might absolutely be brilliant because there's no other dog for them to nudge. There's no other dog for them to be a ninja for. So it's only if something bothers them. But the subtle things they do might be enough to set off a chaos problem dog. Wow, sorry, internet connection rubbish, so had to give up. We'll watch replay when I'm home. Okay, no problem. Thank you for joining for what you could see, and hopefully you'll enjoy it when you can watch it when you're home. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. So we'll talk about bringing another dog into the home when you already have a dog who dislikes other dogs. Or who is choosy with other dogs in certain circumstances, shall we say. So I don't believe there's many people bringing dogs into homes when they have a severely aggressive dog who wants to rip the others to pieces. That's generally doesn't happen too often. But sometimes you do have a dog who's choosy with other dogs, or sometimes you have another dog who they don't really like dogs, but they learn to grow relationships with dogs, and then they can be okay with them. And you've seen this, so you think, if I get another dog, as long as I do it right, my dog will be okay with them. So first of all, as I said, you have to get that personality right. That's regardless of whether your dog is good with dogs, not good with dogs, choosy with dogs. You have to get the right personality for your dog if you're bringing another dog into your home. The main reason for this is no one asks the initial dog, do you want to live with another dog? No one says to them, would you like that? We kind of go, we want another dog, so therefore we're going to bring another one in. Now, some people do it more cautiously than others. Some people just bring another dog in and we see how it goes. And sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. That's life, you know, sometimes people do that. We do it with children as well. We don't go, would you like a brother or sister? We go, here's your brother or sister. You know, it's life. We do that, and we're quite impulsive as well. We decide we want to do something, and dogs don't have the ability to reason. We can't kind of tell them something, this will be happening in the future either. There's not much you can do to get them used to living with another dog. However, working on giving them space from you a lot of the time is helpful prior to another dog coming in. So because you're going to have to work on both dogs being okay separate from each other and both dogs being okay separate from you, you're going to need to start building that in with your first dog prior to getting a second dog. So that they don't think, well, since this other dog came along, now I'm on my own all the time. Or they start to build up anxieties because you're not with them, and you always have been, because that will trigger off, that will become a ninja for the chaos dog. So they will set off problems in your second dog because they're showing signs of anxiety and stress. So starting to build up that little bit of distance from them every so often throughout the day, just randomly, you know, door might be closed sometimes, gate might be up sometimes, setting in management things early on prior to another dog coming in, if you have the time and ability to do that, is really helpful. If you know which dog is coming into your home, what I have always done when I've had boarding, I used to board dogs years and years ago. I haven't done for a long time, but I used to. And when Hayley was boarding for us as well, this is the way that we used to introduce adult dog to adult dogs. We used to meet on a walk. So you go for a walk together for about 90 minutes, if the dogs are able to do 90 minutes. So it's an off-lead walk. You might start on lead, but it's an off-lead walk where they walk together for 90 odd minutes. If they still get on that walk and they're fine, you then drive back to your home, and then they all go in the garden together. because the garden is the least stressful place for the dogs. It's the place with most space and least resources. So resources are things like water bowls, food, toys, sofas, owner things, humans. So being in the garden, generally, dogs find it more valuable to be in a home than in a garden. So once you've done your walk together, you then go back into the garden and you see how that goes. That's like your first kind of day one meeting thing. If that goes well, you can then go into the home. But I do suggest having all resources up to begin with. So there's no toys, there's no bones, there's no chews. Water bowls, you multiply them. So water bowls you have to have. Water bowls will always be on the floor. You multiply them and you put them in lots of different places. You do not put them in places where dogs have to walk past each other, like in hallways or in tight spaces like doorways. Not many people put water bowls in doorways, but you'd be amazed the amount of people who have them in busy areas. So you want to put them out the way, lots and lots of water bowls. So there's always access to water and they don't have to have their face in the same bowl at the same time because that can cause problems. So that's how we've kind of introduced dogs, if you're able to, outside, because then you can tell. However, some dogs are actually worse with dogs outside. They're not good meeting dogs outside, but they're okay with dogs inside. So therefore meeting on a walk would actually be worse for these dogs. So if we take my dogs, for example, which I have a video for, which I will share in the group later. So it's not a particularly interesting video, but for some people who this is relevant to, you may want to see it. So this is introducing Riv. So Riv was one of my later dogs. So when I was with my ex-partner, we had Riv, who's a Doberman cross German Shepherd. She's still very much alive and kicking. She lives with my ex. She's, I think, so what would she be now? 6, nearly 7 years old now. We introduced her when she was 4 years old to both Pudgy, Bosun and Busby. So Bosun and Pudgy at the time were 12-year-olds and Busby was a 9-year-old. So Riv was not my choice of dogs, shall we say. The reason for that is Bosun and Pudge are both 12 years old, although very active and very strong. They're older. Busby was a small Cavalier with 9 years old with a spine problem. So a young, energetic Doberman cross German Shepherd, not the best kind of dog for them. She's black as well, and Bosun's not brilliant with bigger black dogs. She's much bigger than Bosun. Pudgy's not great with dogs who stared at him, and dogs who really like to play enthusiastically. Riv likes to stare and likes to play enthusiastically. Busby doesn't like to play with dogs at all. And Busby, not great with big dogs because they stamp all over him and he's little. Riv very much a stamper. So she wasn't the best kind of dog, but nonetheless, Bex wanted her, so that's what happened. But she came in. So the way we introduced her. So we introduced her into the home. Now bear in mind she'd come from a kennel. What we were told about her is she's dog friendly. She's not dog friendly, but we didn't know that at the time we got her. She was phobic of vehicles, which they did not know this. I don't know how they didn't know it, but they didn't. So they didn't know at all. And didn't like traffic passing or being in a vehicle. So what we did with her when she first came in is when we first got her from the rescue kennel, she went for a big 2.5-hour walk with me and my ex on a long line in a very isolated area where there was nothing around at all. We didn't see a thing. And it was just to calm her down from kennel environment, let her sniff, let her walk, and we didn't really interact with her, just let her do. We then brought her home and we'd already set up. So there was a dog gate, which is taller than a child gate. So dog gates, which are like chest height, one on the front room and one on the office, which was the downstairs kind of garage. So there's 2 gates opposite each other. And so she was on one side in the office and the dogs were on the other side in the living area space and the conservatory and dining room. They could get all around that way as well. So there was double barrier between them. Now, bear in mind she'd come from a kennel environment, which means if you see a dog move, you bark. If your dog barks, you bark. And generally, barriers cause frustration. So if they can't get at something they really want to, they can get more and more wound up. But we thought the safest way of doing it is let them look at each other over a couple of days. So that's what we did. So they would have walks together, which were driven in separate cars to a open space where they were both on a long line. So we did Pudgy and Riv, and then we did Bosun and Riv, and then we did Busby and Riv. So Riv would stay out for the equivalent of 3 walks, which is fine because she was 4 years old and an active dog anyway, and the older dogs would all go for 1 walk at a time. And so we did this with them on a long line at opposite sides of the field with things to sniff, and we just walked around the same area without them getting too close to each other over a couple of days. I think it took 3 days for us to actually let them sniff each other and get near each other, and by that point they'd been looking at each other through the gates for a couple of days. All of them had been given a treat every single time they were looking away from each other, or if they chose to lay down, if they chose to relax and ignore each other, or to entertain themselves doing anything other than staring through the gates, they were rewarded or praised or given something to do. If there were resources available in the house, such as Kongs, bones, anytime there was a chew given, the doors were closed. So they were not looking at each other. There was no potential for guarding there, and water bowls were kept out of view. So these were ways of just making sure there was no issues growing whilst we were introducing them. And they then got to meet and they could sniff each other, and we did lots of like little greetings and then move on, greeting, then move on. And they could then be around each other and they could then live together. The reason they didn't live together fully is because Riv's playstyle, her way of interacting with dogs is to smash them in the face like this repeatedly when she wanted to play with them. And previous dog aggressive Bosun and previous dog aggressive Pudgy and terrified tiny Busby did not appreciate that at all. So although they could be together, they could walk together and they could spend time together, we didn't actually have them live together fully because it wasn't fair on them or on her. She was getting frustrated, she was desperate to play with them, and they wouldn't play with her because they didn't like her and they were like showing teeth at her and things which she wasn't listening to. She didn't have the social skills to listen to it. So she wasn't actually dog friendly outside, but she was dog friendly inside. Quite interesting that. Same with Pudge. Pudge's not dog friendly outside, but he was dog friendly inside, as long as introduced properly. So that was how we introduced dogs who don't like each other into a household. Now obviously, as I said, I'll talk to you in a minute about things that can help if you already have dogs who don't like each other who live together. But if you were introducing a puppy into a household, it's not an option to go for a big walk together first, because puppies, usually they're not vaccinated enough to go out. They can't walk for that long anyway at that age. It's usually 10 minutes. And sometimes your dog may be worse with dogs outside of the house. So to introduce them outside of the house is not that helpful. So you may choose to go with the approach that we did, where you use a lot of management in the early stages, and you actually have either up a puppy pen, if it's a puppy, so that they're not together, but there's a barrier there. They can see each other, so they can work on ignoring each other and learning to do different things around each other whilst there's safety. So you don't want to do anything that restricts movement. Now this is really important. If you want to have dogs together, you don't do movement restricting things, such as keeping a lead on them or putting them in crates, because these are not natural behaviours. And what you can actually do is cause much, much more frustration and barrier frustration and aggression because they can't get to something. That can be so much worse. You want them to have freedom of movement in a room or in a pen. So Claire says, oops, just lost it. How do you manage a new dog and existing dog during the night, for example, when you can't watch and supervise them? Rolly sleeps where he likes, starts off in our bedroom, then goes downstairs to his bed or sofa. Yeah, so of course, that's a very good question. Thanks, Claire. So I tend to say that I would work, it depends, right? So it depends on what your plan is. For puppies, because it is their first night away from, mum, the siblings, the everything, I tend to have puppies sleep with me for the first night. I do advise people, if they're crate trained, to have the crate in their bedroom next to their bed for the first night or two, and then gradually move it away so that you can hear them if they stir and they need to go to the toilet. You can, if they cry, you can put your hand down and just be like, I'm here, it's okay, you're not alone, you're fine. I would actually work on a couple of weeks leading up to the puppy, if it was a puppy coming in the home, is having a gate on your bedroom door. So Rolly sleeps on the outside, just so he's not disturbing you and the puppy in the night. because he might be like, oh, I'll move, and then the puppy then wakes up. So if he moves in the night to go downstairs, as he does, that could wake the puppy up, and then you've then got to take the puppy out for a toilet when the puppy would have otherwise slept. So I would say kind of break him away from your bedroom. You know, I mean, it depends where he sleeps. If he sleeps on your bed, that might be a bit more tricky. But I would still suggest doing it. I would just do it a bit more gradually. So that he doesn't need to be right with you all the time. If it's an adult dog who's coming into the home, again, if they don't know where they are, it's really important that they can be with you to begin with until they find their feet. So again, I'd have that gate up, but I'd allow them to have the freedom of movement in that room. So Rolly could be on the outside. It doesn't need to be forever that they're separate. It's just so that Rolly isn't disturbing them and vice versa. He wouldn't fit on our bed. No, I did wonder. I mean, I didn't know. You might have a super king size bed and you might be on the edges whilst Rolly's in the middle stretching out. But I assumed he wasn't on the bed. Not that there's a problem with that. Bosun would definitely be on my bed if I'd let him. He'd be in the damn thing if I'd let him. But he destroys beds, so he's not allowed to be on there. So yes, you do have to think about these things though. Where do we want puppy or dog to sleep? Because that's important. But you have to do the initial bit. You have to be aware of the stress that they're under when they first come into your home. They don't know you. They don't know the environment. They don't know where they are. So giving them that time to be as close to you as possible for the first few days and few nights, then gradually moving them to where you want them to be is more important than it is just being like saying, nope, this is where we want you to be, therefore you will not go upstairs, or therefore you will not go in the bedroom, because that actually can cause a lot more stress and anxiety. So you're actually better off allowing it initially and gradually moving them away. Victoria, you've just described my life, Ellie. Riley is separated by a gate still after 2 years when I'm out or at night, otherwise just wants to do WWF 24/7. Yeah, too dangerous with older, non-dog friendly and too chihuahuas. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's a safety issue. Sometimes you think you are just too big or too strong or too boisterous, or you do not let up and it's not fair on the other dogs. So you have to use management. There's nothing wrong with that. That's called keeping everyone happy. That's keeping everyone safe and allows you to also relax, because you wouldn't if you left them together. And there's nothing wrong with that. Dogs, this is what I talk about dogs having individual needs. They all have the right to feel safe, have the right to a space away from the other dogs, where they can get away from them, where they can relax, and where they cannot be bothered, because that is important for their internal health as well, their mental health and the health of their body. If they're under stress or they're concerned or something keeps bugging them and bugging them and bugging them, they are not allowed to kind of calm down from that. You cause other problems like health problems and long-term issues. So it's really important in multi-dog households, whether or not they choose to use them or not, completely up to them. But you allow them time away from each other. You allow them safe spots. And if you feel that one of them would prefer a safe spot, let them have it and give them that barrier. Yeah, they're all snoring together now. It's TV time. Yeah, I don't blame them. Yeah, it's nice. See, they can be together, but it's having that management there. And that's important. So as I say, if you're working with dogs who don't get on, or dogs who you're working on them, building them up to be together, you need to have visual barriers, sometimes two, like we've had. So when we've had kennel dogs come in before, we have had two barriers. And that is because if they break through one or jump one, you've got a chance to get to them before they get over the other one. And it also means they're not right like this. You think when a dog puts their nose through a gate and the other dog is right here, they can get at each other. So if you have a dog who's come from kennels, quite often they go at the bars. It's like fence fighting, and that's just frustration and habit, not necessarily because they want to hurt anything. Dogs can do that for a lot of reasons as well. Overplay can be misconstrued, and can be seen as aggression. I've seen quite a lot of not so great things with just one gate being there. So I always try to use two. If you don't have the ability to have a gate here, space, and then a gate, you can have a gate and then a pen around this bit, so that it's still just two rooms and a gate in the middle, but there's a pen, so the dog can't get to this gate and it's still a double barrier. That works really well, depending on the severity of your issue and what you're working with. So desensitizing dogs to muzzles always helps if there's a bite risk, or if you're concerned there may be a bite risk. The thing is, when you have multiple dogs, is they are dogs. They're a different species. They're not us. They already struggle enough living in our world with one dog living in our home, in our world, and dealing with everything the way we deal with it. When you then put another dog into the home, they're then dealing with each other, as well as us, as well as the environment, as well as everything that goes on. And you do not know what could trigger an argument between dogs, a fight between dogs, until you're in that moment. So if there's ever any likelihood of a problem, I muzzle desensitize first. What that means is my dogs absolutely love having muzzles on because I make damn sure they love them. So I do lots of games with muzzles. I do playing with them. I get them to go and fetch their muzzles to having them put on. I hold them. They're shoving their face in. They want to keep it in there as long as they can until you say out because they want that treat. They know it means walks. They know it means fun. They know it means food. They are not bothered by muzzles. Humans are bothered by muzzles, and dogs who are not desensitized to muzzles are bothered by muzzles. Dogs who have had them and they've been played with games with them, with food with them, to them it's just like a harness or a lead or a collar. They don't see it as anything different. It's a toy, it's a game. So I do a lot of that with dogs who come into my home. Basket muzzles, always in my eyes. So the only time I would use a soft muzzle, I don't think I've ever used one, but the only time I would is for grooming kind of things. And that's so that the dogs kind of can't open their mouth and then the eyes are groomed around and then it's taken off. Even then, I think I would still be inclined to use a basket one so they could pant. So basket muzzles allow for panting, allow for the dog to take treats, allow for them to drink, and allow for them to feel more natural. So if they can open their mouth, they're less stressed. So always basket muzzles. Want to try muzzles for travelling in the boot? Yeah, so in confined spaces, again, some dogs can be great living with dogs, but when you confine them in a boot, they don't like that because there's a dog too far in their space, getting excited about a walk, getting wound up because someone's walked past the car, and they can't cope with that level of closeness and stress. So they might fight. Happens a lot. A lot of dogs cannot travel with other dogs, as I found when I did the dog walking. I used to do group dog walking for ages. Do you know how many dogs love to play with other dogs, love being out with them outside? You put them in a car with another dog or a van with another dog and they lose their mind. They want to kill them. And you could get them out on the other side and they just go, hiya. It's crazy. It's barrier frustration does huge things to dogs when they're overexcited, overstimulated, and they just can't get at something. It does horrific things to dogs. Or confined spaces and they can't get away. That does horrific things to dogs as well. So some dogs, even if they've had all the best experiences in the world, don't like sharing close spaces with other dogs. And that's something you may have to work with in a multi-dog household. So what I desensitise dogs to who live together, possibly muzzles if that's a risk. I desensitise all dogs who live together to, it's called collar grab. I don't really like the term grab because I never grab at a dog, but it's called collar grab and turn away. So that is me putting my hand up the side of their collar like this and then turning them away. So I desensitise them to that. And that means I practice putting my hand on their collar, treats. Putting my hand through their collar, treats. Put my hand through their collar, guide away, treats. So that if they look like they're staring something out and you've called them and they're not listening, or if they look like they're about to cause a problem, you can just put your hand through the collar and guide them away and move them off. And they will come with you very willingly because that's what's been conditioned. My dogs don't tend to wear collars in the house unless we have a new one come in or unless we're testing out scenarios, then collars are on for a while. Otherwise they don't. Collars aren't really needed. I don't do collars in the house personally, if through choice. Long lines on collars for houses and gardens are fine, but if you're out on a walk, you need to use a harness with them because of the amount of speed a dog can get up and the kind of long-termness of it. If it's in a house or garden, it's just for a management situation, you can have it on a collar and that's okay. So ideally you don't want to restrict movement anyway. As I said, you don't want leads on, you don't want them attached to you really, you don't really want them in cages because if dogs are in cages, everything's moving but them. So they see dogs getting closer to them, they can sense them coming nearer, they can hear them, they can smell them, they cannot get to them or they can't get away from them and it causes a lot of problems. So I generally work with gates, pens, and lots of recall work. So name game is really important in multi-dog households. So I know I'm talking at the moment like your dogs are trying to kill each other, and that's just because I'm at the point where I'm talking about if dogs don't get on or if you're working with dogs who have issues. So I'm just trying to address that for if that's anyone in this group, because I know there's quite a few people in this group who do have multi-dog issues like that. But the great thing is you can reset them. You can reset dogs. If they don't get on at the moment, you can actually get them to. So it's not as hard as you would think. It just takes a lot of consistent work and doing it the right way. You have to plan it the right way. You can't just wing it. It doesn't work. So puppies. If you got a puppy, their safety is ultimate importance all the time, because they need to have the best experiences ever, hopefully the rest of their life, but as much as you possibly can until they're 3. You need to be making sure that they are confident, they feel safe, they feel secure. And sadly, I went with the hideous advice I was given when I got Pudge as a puppy. So bear in mind, I had Mackerson at this point, who was 9 months old. Gizmo, I also had my Westie, who was 2 at the time. And we had Harry as well. So Harry was a Rottie Cross Lab, and Harry was 6, I think, at the time. And I got Pudge. So Pudge was my 9-week-old fat, pudgy Springer Spaniel, hence the name. He was huge. And I brought him in. And the advice of the dog trainer at the time, who I was working with, anyone I'd spoken to, anything I'd read, anything I was advised, it's you put them on the floor with the other dogs and they will teach each other, they will learn, and they will kind of introduce themselves to each other. I wish now I knew about Protect the Puppy protocol, which is where you crouch down and you allow the puppy safety with you. And if they're with you, you keep the other dogs at bay like this with your hands. And you just let them give you that bit of space. So you'll protect the puppy if they are with you. Because what I actually accidentally taught Pudge is if you're near other dogs, I'm not going to help you. And he was frightened of the other dogs when he first came into my home. And he tried to run behind the sofa to get away from them. And they followed him round there as well. And he tried to come to me and I just kept walking away because that's what I was told to do. So I actually taught him, if you don't like something with dogs, I'm not going to help you. I'm not here to protect you. I'm not here to make you feel safe. And that upsets me now, thinking about that and talking about that. And that probably didn't help with his issues down the line. But that was what I was told. So if you are getting a puppy and you're bringing them into your home, you absolutely have to make sure they feel safe at all times. Certainly in social situations, whether it be humans, whether it be dogs, whether it be livestock, whether it be the cat, doesn't matter. If they're mixing with something, do protect the puppy. So crouch down, allow them to come in between your legs if they want to. If they don't want to, let them move away. It's fine, you don't have to hold them there, but you are just there for support and safety. So if they're with you and something else is near them, that something is not allowed to interact with them if they're with you. You will protect them. And if you are the protection for the puppy, they will always seek safety in you. You will always be a number 1 safety point for them. Now, you can do that with adult dogs when they come to you as well, foster dogs, rehome dogs. It's a bit harder because they're bigger already, but you can certainly teach them where possible. If you're with me, you're safe. Come to me and I will protect you. You do not need to interact with things if you're with me. Unfortunately, we tend to go the other way where we go, come on, let's go socialise and I'll put you near things and see how well we do. Or, you know, we'll try and get you better with things, but it's too close. So they learn if they're with you, they're not safe when they're with you because you put them in situations they don't like. So that's kind of going into another talk, but you just need to be that protection for them all the time. So if a dog's with you or a puppy's with you, they're safe. That's what you need to get in your head. They have to feel safe when they're with you. I said before about the hierarchy of needs. Now, this is an actual thing and it's something I will put in the group along with the videos. And what it is it's a like a pyramid of the dog's hierarchy of needs. Now, in multi-dog households and in single dog households, all these needs need to be met every single day. If they're not, you will run into problems. So it's biological needs, emotional needs, social needs, force-free training needs, and cognitive needs. So what that means is the health and welfare is taken care of, enrichment is taken care of, exercise and training for that dog is taken care of, socialising and play. Now, if the dog doesn't like other dogs, it doesn't mean socialising goes out the window. It's where they're happy at. It's socialising at the distance they're happy with. Play with you, it might be, or with dogs they feel safe with. Sufficient sleep and a safe place. So these are all things that absolutely have to be taken into account and catered for every single day of your dog's life, whether it's multi-dog or single dog. So if one or more of your dogs do not feel safe around each other or around someone in the house, you absolutely have to address it now. So you cannot let that go on. If they do not feel safe because of perhaps the intentions of another dog, the fear of another dog in the house, fear of a person maybe in the house, you have to deal with it. You have to meet that hierarchy of needs, and the safety aspect is so important. They need that addressing, and that is your duty as a dog owner. So as I said, you can reset dogs. If dogs do not like each other, you can reset them. I've done it. I've lived with dogs who do not like dogs, do not like each other, and I've worked with that. You can work with them if they do not like certain members of the household, maybe it be people, maybe it be children. You can work with that to an extent, depending on the safety of the human and the intent with the dog. You start with separating. Separating is important. Separating space, multiplying everything, your food, your toys, your waters, valuable things. You do separate walks, separate time in the house. If you start at the furthest possible point where they're separate, and then you gradually reintroduce them in different scenarios, you can actually pinpoint where the problems are, what those issues are, and at what point they appear. If they're together all the time, you can't do that. You work on self-control whilst they're separate. Self-control, settle down, do nothing, put value into doing nothing. Even if your dogs don't have issues, please put value into your dogs doing nothing when the others are doing something and when things are going on. That's the most valuable thing ever to teach a dog. Recalls as well. Do you know how valuable the name is of your dog? If you can say their name and they will instantly turn around and come to you in the house. If you have multi-dogs, it's so important. If a situation's getting het up, or if excitement's kicking off, or if there's two dogs about to walk through a doorway together and that could be an issue, you call one, they turn and walk the other way. That is so valuable. So recall in the house. Even if your dog doesn't listen to you outside, who cares? Get them to listen to you in the house if you're working with multi-dog issues. You feed out of sight, you keep valuables out of sight of each other, because valuables can actually cause problems. Resources and valuables can. And that's easy to manage if you know that's what the problem is. Sometimes when dogs are aggravating each other all the time and there's different kind of irritations going on, they will pick a fight over anything, but that's not what their problem is. When you separate them, you can work with the problem, you can find out what the problem is, and then you can work on that. Claire, does the sex of an additional dog matter, and would it be better to have one of each or not? It depends on your dog. It depends on Rolly. So I have personally found that males and females get on better together. However, I find females harder to work with than males. I find females, if they're going to have a problem, they really, really have a problem. And it's very difficult to work with. If a male dog has a problem, it's generally easier. I just find them a bit more biddable. It may be my personality and their personality. It could be that. It might be that I find males easier to work with than females. I don't know. But I personally think if you're looking to have another dog in the home and you've got a neutered male like Rolly, I think possibly a female could be easier. But it would depend on the personality and the temperament and the breed and the type. Because you could go with a male of the best personality type and everything for Rolly, and it would get on better with him than a female of the hardest kind of breed type personality. Does that make sense? So it does depend on what you're getting and if it's right for him. I would say female if you have male. But personally, and certainly in the future, I might live to eat my words, but I think if I have multi-dogs again, I would probably be inclined to go two neutered males myself. Male, then yeah. Males for me are just easier. I gel better with them. I think they're easier for me to work with. It's not I don't like female dogs, it's just every female dog I've had, if there's an issue, there's a hell of an issue. And they don't let up generally if there is an issue. Not easily anyway. Seems a bit of an odd thing for a behaviourist to say, but it's just my findings. Male dogs I find are a lot easier. So I think if there was, certainly if you're talking hormonal, if there's hormonal issues between dogs, two bitches together, I've actually known two females have killed each other. If it's a hormonal issue and it's bitches, you can have a hell of a problem, a really big problem. But again, it does depend on the types, the type, the temperament, the everything. The two females I'm talking about, where one killed the other and one had to be put to sleep due to injuries, that was a very specific hormonal issue between the two dogs. It's not a common thing, but it's certainly, for me, I think female dogs, they just seem a bit, I don't know what it is. If they're, like I said, if there's a problem, there's a problem. That's my findings anyway. I find that the males are generally better. They might be more on edge, they might be more nervous, or they might have issues, but I think they can let go of them a bit easier than girls. Yeah, Rolly loves Hayley's dog Charlie. Everyone loves Charlie. Everybody loves Charlie because he's such a damn flirt. But yeah, I mean, he's a neutered boy, but again, he likes him outside. Loves to play with him out there. In the home, who knows? I would say it's opposite sexes are generally better. Victoria, although our females are not more loyal to humans generally, all my girls have been so loyal, where lads are whatever feed me. No, see, that depends on personality again, from what I found. Like my Springer boy, oh wow, was he loyal. Oh my word. My Labrador, my male Labrador, would have gone with anybody. Bosun would go with anybody. Oh my god, he wouldn't care if you fed him and walk him, he'd be anybody's. Kibba, my girl, she was very, very loyal, but she didn't like people. So she liked me, but she didn't like anybody else. My Shar-Pei Moggy, she loved me. But again, Shar-Peis aren't great with randomers either. I don't know, I think it comes down to the dog, that does. I think if they're loyal to their person, I think that's a lot to do with the history with that person and what they find valuable. Because some dogs don't find value in being with their humans. Some find it really, really valuable. So like when we're talking personalities of what dog would match your dog the best, if you have a dog who absolutely adores you and the space around you and being on your lap, and that is very intrinsically rewarding for that dog, bringing in another dog who also finds that very, very valuable could actually be quite difficult. It might be easier to bring in a dog who's not genetically predisposed to care about sitting on laps and to have that kind of value there. So loyalty kind of comes down to that dog, I think, that kind of temperament about them, what they find rewarding and reinforcing. I think males and females, I certainly haven't noticed anything different there. So I hope this chat's been helpful. I've kind of I've gone through all the points that I wanted to talk about today, but I hope it's been helpful to you. And if anyone's thinking about getting a second dog, maybe this will give you some food for thought. If you're kind of thrown into a situation, if you find you're chucked into one where you've got another dog coming in, I just suggest getting dog gates pretty quickly. Separating the dogs when you're not around, separating the dogs when you, whilst you're working on things like resources, like high value times, like when visitors are there, and kind of build things in slowly and gradually as you can where possible. If you have the choice, choose very wisely, because it'll be something that will impact your life for potentially the next 10, 12, 15 years if you're lucky. So you want to make sure you're making the right choices there. Certainly everyone has the idea that it's going to be great, and I wish all greatness on anyone who has multi-dog households or who wants to have a multi-dog household, but it's just about being aware. I like to highlight potential problems for people, because then you know what to look for, you know what to work with, and you know what things could be difficult. It's no use if you don't know or you're going blind. It's better to know, and then you can kind of help yourself, as well as I can help too.